The State Department of Education has realized that mental health is an area that we are not touching in a school, and you can't not touch it. When I first started, I was one of very few social workers in the state of Alabama, and I come in there and these teachers are like, they need to learn math, they need to learn this. I'm like, they don't have power at home. What are they're not eating. I can't make them come to school, and they got to go to work to provide help their mom eat, to have food on the table. And the teachers, I didn't feel like the teachers really got it. I felt like I was fighting a battle with them because they wanted that baggage to be left at the door, and it just doesn't happen.
Substance use disorder touches all our lives, and often we feel hopeless or frustrated in our pursuit to understand how and why it happens.
Welcome to APC Recovery Cafe, where we discuss the topics and trends around substance use, provide education and resources, offer recovery support, and also discuss prevention tactics, all through the stories of the people who have been there.
We invite you to grab your favorite coffee or tea and join us for a variety of guests that will bring understanding, information, connection, and hope.
Together, we can break the stigma and pave a brighter future for each other.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of APC Recovery Cafe. My name is Art Wimberly. I'm a person grateful to be in long-term recovery, a volunteer with the Addiction Prevention Coalition. And today we have in our studios my co-host, Raven Johnson with APC. Good morning, Raven.
Good morning. I'm Raven Johnson. I'm the Director of Student Initiatives at APC, and I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I'm really happy to be here with Miss Eve Gunn. We will be interviewing her today.
Hey, Raven.
Hey, Miss Gunn. I call her Miss Gunn because I'm usually in the
schools. You can call me Eve out of the school.
All right, Eve. So what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a white chocolate mocha from Starbucks.
Okay. And why do you like the white chocolate mocha?
Because I'm really just like a little coffee with my cream.
Yeah.
And so I have to order. That's something I can order and not have to fix.
Okay.
Like I can order and go and not have to add coffee, add cream or sugar or anything like that.
Sounds delicious.
Well, it has like a zillion calories and costs too much money.
So, Ms. Gunn, tell me a little bit more about your current role as a mental health services coordinator.
Correct.
What that is?
It was because the State Department of Education realized that mental health is a need throughout our state, and they developed this position and offered grant money originally, and now they gave money for every district in the state to hire a mental health services coordinator. So I moved from the graduation coach or dropout prevention person to the role of mental health services coordinator back during COVID in October 2020.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about like the services you have going on?
I do anything. It's really a neat position because I can bring in whomever I want to bring in. I coordinate any kind of mental health services for the children. So if somebody needs a referral to our in-school therapists, I do that. If they speak Spanish and they need a Spanish therapist, I coordinate that through another outside organization. I do special interests. I can do, INFOCUS to come in and do the vaping like we've done before, or tobacco prevention. We did that last year. I'm doing a program with Children's Hospital on head injury, making good choices, wear a helmet, because those are any kind of good decision. I feel like anything I can do to help these children make better decisions is a positive. Yeah. So that's really what I do. So it's kind of
you had said earlier your degree and your education background wasn't to get a teaching certificate.
Heck no.
But you ended up in a school system, and so I guess a master's of social work. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was a graduate degree. What prompted you to go on that track? What was the inspiration to even go on that track?
Do you want me to make up a good social work story,
sure.
Or do you want me to tell you the truth? I had graduated from Auburn, and I wanted to go to law
there's
school.
a problem right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to go to law school, but I had called my parents my last quarter in school in undergrad and said I was going to take that quarter off, and they're like, heck no. And because of that, you don't get to go to law school because they were not going to pay for me to take the LSAT. And I moved to Nashville with my best friend from Bay Minette, where I grew up, And then she was moving to Boston because she found herself a Harvard doctor. So she was moving to Boston, and I didn't have anything to do. So I applied to graduate school at Alabama and got my master's in social work. So that's really how that happened. But then I was working in medical social work, and there was an opening for a social worker at a school, which was very uncommon at the time.
Right.
And I applied, and I got it. And my father was an educator. My mother is a juvenile probation officer. So it's kind of, my grandmother was a social worker.
Wow.
It's kind of a natural
So it's in your DNA and in your family system.
I tried to get away from it, but I couldn't.
Yeah. But clearly you care deeply about the children.
I love being in the school. I love being part of the energy, and it keeps you kind of young, even though I'm not hip and cool. I kind of think I am because I'm around kids that are hip and cool. I just love it. I love being part of it. It's never boring. There's always something going on. And with my new job, my new position, I get to go to all 3 schools. So it's even more fun.
Change.
Yeah, more challenging and fun all at the same time.
So a lot of things we've discussed today, to me, though, I could see how it would tempt a person to become discouraged. So what keeps you from, and I'm sure you have moments of it.
Yes.
But what keeps you going? Because you're clearly optimistic about this.
And as I said earlier, being able to expose these children to the same thing that my children had the opportunity to do or have the opportunities to pursue, I just think it's important, and I get great enjoyment out of that.
Okay. Talk a little bit about what student initiatives can mean, because there's a lot of different ones we try to do, and they're evolving, right?
Right.
So talk a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah. So addiction prevention looks a little bit different depending on what ages you're looking at. So for elementary school, that's when we are teaching about emotions and doing social and emotional learning.
And the stop smoking.
Yeah.
We did last year.
The tobacco work as
tobacco,
well.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of vaping and tobacco prevention.
Because it can get easily lost in a world in which we're talking about opiates and opioid addiction and fentanyl and all the other things we're struggling with substance use disorder. Tobacco can get lost as one of the main health and killers in this country. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And vaping is really, I feel like my school at Tarrant High School, we're kind of behind a little slow on the uptake. Vaping is just now hitting our school, or maybe not just now, but we're starting to see it just rampant. And I know I have a sophomore in college, and when he was in junior high, so that would be 4-5 years ago, when he was in 7th grade, it was really popular at his high school, and so it's now, or junior high, and now it's just now becoming popular.
Yeah.
Or that we're finding it. I don't know. Maybe we're naive to the whole thing.
Well, no, but you may be right. It may be becoming a critical mass where you're seeing it more.
Right.
We could even probably go into cultures and communities and why that may be so.
Well, and because my school's low-income school, so kids have a harder time. I mean, they're expensive, and or maybe they've gone down in price. I don't know, but
makes sense.
We just recently put in these things in the bathroom called halos, and they detect smoke and loud noises. So if there's any kind of extra activity going on in the bathroom. But anyway, they detect the vape, and they detect if they're trying to spray something to cover up the vaping smell, or however
So obviously, as educators, with the health and well-being of your students in mind, it's that important that y'all have gone to this to add the technology here.
Yes,
exactly. It's not just about keeping the rules and a morality thing. It's about protecting their well-being.
Well, they just don't get it. They're so dangerous. And so I interrupted you, but so Jasmine came and did the program at the elementary school, at the intermediate school, and at the high school last year.
Yeah,
for the whole 6th through 12th grade,
6th through 12th, 5th through 12th. So like y'all said, vaping, you have to start early.
Yes.
It's so harmful for the developing brain. It does. I mean, it's addictive, and it can impact your whole hierarchy of needs as they get older. But moving on into middle school, that's when we start teaching about peer refusal strategies, and we kind of take a perspective of it's not like some stranger trying to offer you drugs or to hit a vape. It's like your best friend.
Right.
And then high school, which is a lot of where INFOCUS chapters came from, is because students start listening to their peers more than they do their adults. So we're teaching students about the facts of substance use, but also like how to be leaders and talk to their friends about it and help somebody that might be struggling.
It's been great.
And I know another focus is catalyst issues, right?
Yes.
Not just the facts about something, which is important, peer pressure and all that, but even talking about those catalyst issues that we start encountering as teens and early teens and teenagers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And we definitely talk about that at Tarrant. I was going to ask, like, what are some of the like major catalyst issues that you see in your school?
Well, I was going to add that we were, I think, the first school to do youth mental health first aid with y'all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hence my shirts.
Yes.
We love the shirts.
Great.
And so we were very, very fortunate. We were very fortunate to be connected with INFOCUS, period, and all the things that y'all offer. We're very appreciative. But Raven came and did youth mental health first aid last year.
It was a little over a year ago.
Yeah,
and
so,
it's teen mental health first aid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So youth mental health first aid is what adults,
Yes.
the class adults take.
Yeah.
But teen
Is
mental health first aid
Yeah.
to our seniors. And I felt like it was very important because they could be trained in this and then go out into the world. And we were giving them another tool to put in their toolbox to be able to cope in real life. So it was great.
Well, it seems like it's kind of this evolution of us as a culture trying to figure out what are the things that we haven't been talking well about that really are real.
Right.
And substance use disorder, of course, but even the mental health issues. We're finally learning how to talk out loud about these things, and these are realities. We need to begin talking about them, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what you guys are doing in the schools and trying to figure out age-appropriate ways to do that. So, Raven, I know you. We've done this type of work before, so I know a little bit about your story, why you're interested, but I'm curious, Eve, as besides being an educator and an administrator in an education setting, is there something personal for you about this?
Well, I'm a social worker by trade. So
Okay.
I don't have my teaching certificate. I have my master's in social work. And my job is currently a district job. I'm not really an administrator, but thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I do like to tell people what to do, so I don't know if that counts.
Okay, all right.
They don't always listen, but I do enjoy that. So I've been at the school, I guess this is probably my 14th, 15th year, something like that. But when I started, I worked in dropout prevention. And then I've recently, in the last 2 years, moved into the mental health services coordinator. And it's because of what you said. The State Department of Education has realized that mental health is an area that we are not touching in a school. And you can't not touch it. I mean, it totally affects everything.
It's touching you whether you want to or
right.
not.
And they're bringing, when I first started, I was one of very few social workers in the state of Alabama. And I come in there and these teachers are like, they need to learn math. They need to learn this. I'm like, they don't have power at home. What are you, they're not eating. You can't, they've got to go to work. They're not going to come to school because I was doing dropout prevention. I can't make them come to school and they got to go to work to help their mom eat, have food on the table. And the teachers, I didn't feel like the teachers really got it. I felt like I was fighting a battle with them because they wanted that baggage to be left at the door, and it just doesn't happen.
Can't.
And so over the last 10, 15 years, that has evolved, and the teachers are more aware. And so the State Department developed this position, and so every district in the state of Alabama has the ability to hire, and meaning they have money, they can apply for these grants to hire a mental health service coordinator. So definitely the need, the recognition of the need has evolved.
Do you think that by being placed in that Tarrant school or in that system or in that place, did that make you more aware of the need than you had been? Or?
Absolutely. Well, as a social worker, I was aware, but I was not of the unmet needs, I guess.
got
You know the kid has issues, they're struggling, but
The scale of it, maybe.
Yeah, the scale of it.
Yeah.
The scale of it. And I think, I've always thought this, and this is an undocumented, non-scientific research of my own, that poverty drives a lot of what we see. And so with COVID, there was an exacerbation, and that was a big thing with the State Department, that COVID, as a result of COVID. I'm like, no, not really as a result of COVID. We had issues before.
Just expose them.
It just is exacerbated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then our school has had a changing demographic. This year we're like almost 50% Hispanic.
Really?
And so just when we're getting a little bit of a handle on what's going on with our current population, literally it flips, because I've been there, I think 2008, I should have looked that up. But so since that time, when we were a majority African-American school, we've flipped to 50% Hispanic.
Okay.
So we struggle.
Yeah. So Raven, have that change in demographic, does that present anything to you guys when you're going in and doing groups where y'all have a different learning curve too?
Yes, for sure. Because, of course, there's cultural differences. So what substance use looks like for you and your background. But the biggest thing is also the language barrier.
Yes.
Okay.
And how can we provide more resources to still educate and reach this population? That's definitely the biggest thing I've seen.
Yeah, and we have translators in our school now, full time. They're there every day. And so when we have a INFOCUS club, if there are children that don't speak English, we have the translator come to the meeting. But I think the cultural issues, especially around alcohol and drug abuse within the Hispanic population, are different. Do you agree with that? Again, unscientific.
Agree.
Right. Doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different.
It's just different.
Right.
And the way you communicate about these things and what the social norm is growing up is probably the biggest thing.
And we struggle with the children who, even if they're documented and their parents are not documented, they don't want to give out any information. They don't want to tell anything. And so
okay, so there's another layer I don't think I was aware of. You got the changing culture, right? The demographics changing, the language barrier, but even that sense of, even if they are, quote, legal, right, documented, however you want to say it, there's still that hesitancy to disclose,
right, and
which would help.
With my current position, you have a child who needs some mental health intervention, and the parents are not they don't want to do it. They don't want to have anybody know their business.
Yep.
So and most people don't want to let people know their business.
It probably doesn't matter who you are, you don't.
Another issue where they're scared. There's a fear factor there.
Right. Can I even trust if I give this information?
And you're not going to use this to deport me or hurt my family.
Yeah. As a person, I've been in long-term recovery for about 20 years, and it's interesting. I've collected these stories over the years of quote unquote the people that won't talk about the issues. First, it was Southerners. I was told they wouldn't talk about it. Then it was actually people in Great Britain. They told me they don't talk about it either. Then somebody from South America said, well, the indigenous Indian tribes, they don't talk about it. Then later it was Asians, African Americans, and then finally it was Jewish people.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about anything.
Right. But I do understand what you're saying is there's an additional pressure often with African Americans, maybe with Hispanics, is that there's a trust issue deeper than even just, I don't want you to know what's going on, but I think you might use it against me in a legal way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's another barrier you guys are having to break through.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, what helps is having people that have lived the same experiences as them, that have the same cultural background, and coming and talking about it.
Wow.
That helps a lot with the trust.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
So is that something y'all are able to do on a regular basis? Is that hard to find, or is it?
Yeah, I think a lot of agencies in this space is getting better at it.
I think definitely just back to who's afraid. You have the different, like the NFL players are starting to do commercials and things about mental health and seeking. And Nick Saban did a segment not too long ago on the Today Show, And he talked about the need for mental health within athletes, even on the college level. And so I think anytime you hear that somebody that you look up to is seeking help, that helps.
And saying it's okay, it's normal, and it's needed. Yeah,
They
it normalizes it. Yeah,
exactly.
very good. So currently, what are y'all can catch up the audience a little bit on what are some of the trends that you're beginning to see? You mentioned in your school the vaping is now coming up. Are there other trends that you guys are seeing, whether it's in terms of substance use or whether it's mental health issues or whatever? What are some of the things you guys are seeing more and more you feel like you've got to address?
I'll say this year, violence has been a big issue that students want to talk about. And I have never heard of so many students like knowing what the word trauma meant.
Yeah.
I never talked about that when I was in high school. And
you didn't have a need, probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really eye-opening that they are starting to realize, okay, catalyst issues, that's trauma, like things that happened in my childhood.
I answered that question earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And like anger management too. I've heard those topics being discussed a lot in the schools this year.
We've had, knock on wood, we've not had any kind of gun violence at school, but the amount of gun violence in the neighborhoods
surrounding
we've had 2 children, I say children, young adults that have died that recently graduated from Tarrant, actually more than that, who were at Tarrant and transferred to other schools that have been killed, murdered.
Wow.
We've had one of our staff members lost her daughter. It makes me, it's horrible.
Yeah.
A couple years ago at UAB, she was shot.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
And so it's just a lot. It's a lot of gun violence, and we don't know what to do. I didn't mean to get all emotional.
No, that's fine. We are seeing that trend up, and I think they're pretty sure that's attached to COVID and the pandemic and the shutdown, although we can't explain all of it from that.
I don't really think so, though. I mean,
okay, yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I just think it's guns being available, and kids they just love them. I mean, they're intrigued by guns, and we hear about guns. We know that guns are in their homes, and I don't know what to do about it.
Well, there definitely is. I think we're becoming way more aware that as a culture and a country, we have glamorized it for so long.
Yes.
Some of it under the guise of protecting Second Amendment rights. I don't own a gun, but I'm not against guns.
And I'm not against guns either.
Right.
But I'm against children having guns.
Right. I do think we've glamorized the culture, some intended and some unintended.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're seeing some of the negative results of that in the school system.
We've had a kid that was arrested last year for killing somebody. I mean, he's in jail. He was 18, so it's just horrible. Yeah, and so from that, other kids in the school know about gun violence, and I mean, I could name 10 kids that we've talked about doing a group for children who've had some exposure to gun violence.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that off the ground, but
so that's one of the traumas you were talking about.
Yeah, I was speaking with another mental health coordinator who told me, she's in elementary, middle, and high school. She has not met a single student who has not lost an immediate family member that's
from gun
been
violence.
Murdered. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And she, we talk about social norms, and she was like, this is the social norm that they're growing up with. Gun violence is considered normal. And that's how you, cope, or when you're angry, that's how you set it, come to like a resolution, I guess, with conflict.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Question, when you work in the quote prevention field, it's really difficult to measure prevention, right? Because if you do good at it, there's not a lot to measure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of the things that makes it tougher to stay in the field of prevention. So can y'all talk a little bit about, if we can't measure it all the time, what are some things that you see that make you hopeful or make you want to continue prevention work? Can you talk a little bit about that?
You go first.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's very small things for me, and those relationships with the students where they'll come to you and be like, well, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but now I'm hopeful and I found this passion. And I really want to use this passion in my life. It's not always going to college. It might not be a career, but it might be like a hobby. One kid told me, you know, he started doing MMA fighting and like boxing and stuff, and that he's like starting to win money and like he loves it.
So do you think in one sense that often then they make the decision, because I have that goal that I didn't have before, maybe I'll make decisions I wouldn't have made before, whether it's to stay away from substance use or violent activity or whatever? Maybe that gives them hope.
Yeah, I think it's seeing like the hope come alive in them, because when we went to Youth, this conference out in Ohio, the students completely changed from like when we met up at the airport and we came back. And one thing we told them was like, we want you to find something that you're passionate about. And they were just kind of like looked at me like and shrugged their shoulders like, I don't know what I like to do. And to me, like being a teenager and not knowing what you love or feeling like some deep connection to something, that it's kind of like a dark place. So like seeing the hope come to them, and that whatever that may be. I
think exposure, just taking those children on that trip. I don't know who all went. I don't know that any of our kids go.
Antonio.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to say that.
But
You're good.
Just exposure. I think exposing them to INFOCUS, exposing them to people like Raven that can come in and tell her story and have a successful ending. I think that's the biggest part of my job. I think it's just arranging for whatever exposure is, because our kids at our school live in a very, you have other communities in the Birmingham area, and you have a tiny kingdom, they have all these things. My school really is like a little bitty tiny kingdom. We're very secluded. To go to the summit, which is just, 10 miles from Tarrant City limits, there are kids who've not been to the summit.
Right. And
I think that just getting out of our bubble is very, very important. And if that means bringing people to our bubble, same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because struggling with a lack of resources.
Transportation.
Right?
Yeah. And like INFOCUS is taking a group of our kids to a conference Wednesday at Chaco Springs. Our kids have never been there before. That's going to be a huge deal for them.
Well, that's a great point. So people seeing this when it airs may think there's not much I can do because I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not trained in these other issues. But actually resources like volunteering to drive, providing gas money, being a sponsor, or just going along on a trip, a lot of those things are contributing to what you're talking about for people that may think they can't volunteer.
Absolutely. I mean, resources, just donations to INFOCUS or addiction prevention, so that they can take more kids and offer more things and give out more T-shirts and all that good stuff.
So if you could draw up, like in a perfect world, since you like to tell everybody what to do, but they don't always listen.
They never listen.
We're going to pretend that some people listen right now, and just do a thought experiment. What are some of the things you would like to see more of from resources like APC, INFOCUS? How would you design some of those things? What do you hope all schools could have? In a perfect world, how would you help?
I have 3 things.
Okay.
In my perfect world, that we would teach all students to swim, because I saw this story one time about this guy who was an Olympic swimmer, and he was a black guy, and he lived in New York City, I think, like in the city. And so he didn't know how to swim, and he went somewhere to a pool and he almost drowned. And so his mother got him into the YMCA. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember if this was all the details. But he so he learned to swim and he became an Olympic swimmer. And I thought, well, if you ever travel outside of your in traveling, you go to a pool, go to a hotel, they have a pool, you always want to swim. Our kids don't know how to swim, so they need to learn how to swim. They need a bank account, and they need to learn to drive. Because at my school, if you go out to the parking lot, there are 200 kids. If you say 10th through 12th graders can drive. 16? Are you 16 in the
Yeah.
10th grade? Some
Yeah.
people are.
Turning-
Let's say 11th grade and 12th grade, or we should have 200. About 200 students that can drive. I mean, 16 years old or over. We probably have 10 cars because they don't have cars. They don't have driver's license. And again, you can't get out of Tarrant City if you can't drive.
Right.
And not that Tarrant is a bad place, and I don't want anybody
Yeah.
that watches this to think that I think that. I don't.
But being able to expand your horizons.
I tell every kid that I see, I want you to have options. If you never just want to be able to work at McDonald's. You want to be able to work at McDonald's or go work at wherever else. You want to have options in life. And I think a driver's license, a checking account, and to be able to swim gives you those options. So that's my perfect world. Forget chemistry, physics, forget it.
Got it. Okay. So, all right, in terms of banking
And those
account.
are classes I didn't do well in either. So,
So like banking account sounds like learning how to handle money early because it's going to be a skill you're going to need.
you want a job that you have direct deposit.
Yeah.
You work at McDonald's, you get a check. You get, but if other jobs, you have to have direct deposit.
Yeah.
It's more of a, professional job that you have direct deposit, and you can't have direct deposit if you don't have a bank account.
Yeah. So beginning to learn life skills earlier, and as you say, in the school system you're in and in that physical location, a lot of lack of resources that many of us grew up taking for granted.
Right.
And I don't think we're starting to catch up to the fact at just how much that hinders a person to becoming who they're supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah. It's easy to ignore something like that. So, Raven, as y'all go forward with what you're doing at APC, and I know y'all are always looking at new ideas and how to develop and how not only to reach into the school systems, but, hey, how do we best serve these folks at these different ages? What do you see on the horizon? Anything new coming up? Anything y'all brainstorming about, or what really seems to work well that y'all want to kind of try to do more of?
Gosh, that's a tough question. There's a lot to unpack there. I definitely piggybacking off what you said, like transportation. I think we're trying to look at a better method to be able to provide transportation to students. Because if we can provide transportation, our attendance and the number of students that we can reach always goes up. So that
goes back to people resources.
Yeah. And then we are actually about to start educating some health teachers on signs to look for if you have a student who is struggling without seeming like you're invading their privacy. So suicide prevention, but also teaching teachers about de-escalation and how to take care of yourself too, because students can kind of pick up on when you're stressed out, and healthcare providers, teachers, everybody is very strained right now. So I think reaching the health teachers, all teachers really, and giving them the tools they need, since they are seeing the students every day, is kind of a more strategic way.
Oh, okay. So it's not just the students you're hoping to aid, it's also the teachers as well.
Absolutely.
Because you can't tell a student to calm down when you're yelling and screaming. I mean, you have to have your act together to be able to handle a student that is struggling.
And it was always a stressful life for most teachers, but the shutdown in the 2 years, I suspect, has increased some of that difficulty for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this has been a wonderful time. I'm so appreciative not only that you came today, but for what you're already doing. You're really, I know it's a job, but it seems like you're going above and beyond in your love for the students and the teachers.
I love, again, there are not too many cooks in my kitchen. And if I can, I'm not an expert on, what is that? A little bit about everything, but expert on nothing.
Yeah, the jack of all trades.
Yeah, there you go. But, when I can call on Raven and the other addiction prevention people to come in and do do the part that I like, it's wonderful.
Beautiful. Great.
It's great.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Thanks
you.
for what you do. Raven, you get the last word today.
Oh, yeah. Ms. Gunn, it has been amazing hearing more about you, what you do. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. And thank you. I hope we can, let me do my plug, schedule another teen mental health first aid class.
Absolutely, yes.
Folks, thanks for joining us for this episode of APC Recovery Cafe. We'll see you next time.
One of the things that APC is known for is being a connector because we're stronger together.
Not only are we there for those who are suffering through substance use disorder, but we're there for family members, and we really take our job seriously.
We all have personal reason why we're in this field. We're changing people's lives one community at a time.